So listen, that's what we hear about. We hear about cashing out. But I don't want to go there just yet. I want to hold up. I want to hold up. I want to pump the brakes a little bit, man, because we've just been watching your journey from afar, somewhat up close, ever since 2017 when you all came on the scene. And a lot's changed. This is something that you all were doing on the side to something that's now what you all do for real, for real. You all have, I know the book is called Cashing Out, but you all have put all your chips into this platform called Rich and Regular. So let's go there for a second, because a lot of people, they have ideas that they either sit on or they put out there, but don't put a whole lot of energy into it. You all felt passionately enough about this work that you all decided to go all in on it. Talk about that process of going from an idea to try to help people on the side to this is going to be what we do for our life. Talk about that journey.
Ooh, yeah, it's ongoing, even though we've both been kind of in it for 2 years now. Julian, more so than me, he left our corporate jobs earlier than I did. He left in 2018 and I didn't leave until 2020. But it's an ongoing journey because it's really asking you to confront an identity, one that you have probably been conditioned to expect as a employee with a good job and someone who makes that 6-figure job or achieves some sort of professional ambition, into a role of service, into a role of creativity and inspiration. And that shift, depending on what day you ask me, what month, what bill is due, it can be difficult. It really requires you to dig deep and lean on those things that aren't tangible, faith and God and like all of the all the things that you need to be your whole self. But a lot of it on the non kind of mindset side was in good financial preparation. We always lived off of kind of less than half when we were both making when we were both traditionally employed. And so we had a really nice savings account. We had a great investment portfolio. We had real estate that we could liquidate to ensure that we would give our business enough breathing room to actually grow. So now that we're right at that 5-year anniversary mark, we're not facing the same things that a lot of companies face, where I don't know what the stat is, but I think it's something like 50 or 60% of small businesses don't make it to year 5. What we're facing at year 5 is a decision about who we want to be for the next 5 years. It's not a matter of viability or financial ruin or bankruptcy or anything like that. It's more of like, all right, what does the next phase of this look like? And it's a great place to be.
I'd add to that it's, going back to the original feelings that gave us the confidence to your point, take it from idea to this is something that we are going to make at the center of our lives. And for me, and I think for both of us, it was also just kind of paying attention to the sparks.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean, at that point in our lives, we were both doing well in our jobs, but I think the love for that work was just sort of fading away.
Mm-hmm.
And when we thought about the type of work that we did that made us feel alive, more often than not, it was the work that we were doing and the stories that we were telling through our platform. And then we shared the story in the book. One of the last projects that I worked on was actually back when all this entire world was just called influencer marketing. And I remember being a brand manager at the time and signing off hundreds of thousands of dollars to our PR team so that they could explore this influencer world. And we found some people, basically found this guy who we paid him to take a vacation with his 3 girls. And he was a father, a Black man, he was a father, and went on vacation. All we asked him to do was to take some pictures, write a blog post, and to make sure that they tagged the brand in the process of going through that. And this was around 2016.
Yeah, this was a while ago.
And so after I cut the check, I wanted to know how much he actually got off that check. And it was around $10,000. And so when I thought about that, this is, again, 2016, the fact that somebody who was not a celebrity by any means would be paid $10,000 to take a vacation, knowing that even at the time, and I'm sure it's still relevant now, that around half of the people can't even afford to take the vacation that they've earned. I felt like the math ain't math and something ain't right here. And as good as I am, I know I can take 10 vacations and make more money having a great time than doing the work that I was doing at the time. And so I knew then, one, that it was possible Two, that I had inside knowledge into how that world looked, and that we might be able to, one, use our passions and the skill sets that we've developed to turn that into something. So it was a combination of things that really got us started and gave us the confidence to say, okay, there's something here, even beyond just social media, that we could tap into.
Yeah, and for you, this message was particularly important for, and this is how you all launched the book or opened the book, was an alarming stat about what would happen to the wealth of African Americans overall. And I know that your message is for everybody, but I know you all have a real burden for the Black and Brown community to become more aware of this wealth game that you all are unpacking in the book. So talk to us a little bit about that, the roots that made you put pen to paper and come up with Cashing Out.
Yeah, we came across a study that said that if things continue, this was pre-pandemic. So if things continued the way that they were going with the racial wealth gap and the overall median net worth for Black families, the median net worth for Black families would be at $0 by 2053. So of all of the Black people in our country, the median net worth would be $0 by 2053, because we are going in the wrong direction to no fault of our own, right? So we came across that stat, and it was just alarming to think that there would be an entire population of us that just had no net worth, had no financial safety net, would not be able to avoid homelessness or an emergency if something were to happen. A lot of us are living paycheck to paycheck. And so we really just wanted to find ways to amplify the message that unless you do something that is considered countercultural or different from what you've been taught or what your parents may be doing or what you've seen other people do, unless you do something different, you could end up on the wrong side of that statistic. We wanted like the loudest bullhorn, the loudest venue, whether it was a book or YouTube or a podcast, to just start saying these things out loud and to make the data more approachable and realistic for Black families.
Yeah, I think, one of the biggest things that we also recognized was that as important as education and financial education was, I don't know that we believe, and even till this day, that it's the only thing that is needed to take us or to solve the problem, right?
Yeah.
This is a much bigger issue than that, but more often than not, whenever we would try to have these conversations with people, everyone would just default to talking about the importance of financial education and financial illiteracy. And quite honestly, our point of view on that was very different. I actually feel like what we need to do is to find more creative ways to make these kinds of conversations palatable and, dare I say, entertaining, right? And so I'm an 80s baby, and I think back to Reading Rainbow and the role that LeVar Burton played in making reading something that, let's just be honest, right? It's boring. Most people talk about reading and books, and the very first feeling or thought that comes to mind is that this is boring. Very similar when you start talking about things like financial literacy and racism. People tune out. It's boring. It doesn't feel good. But as soon as they're done, they will turn on and they will watch the game, or they will watch food TV, or they will watch travel TV. And so our job was to say, all right, how do we find ways to make this content entertaining so that it becomes more of an everyday part of people's lives and it doesn't feel so heavy? And there's only so much you can do. Some of these things are just scary and horrific, but it doesn't mean that we can't make this stuff more entertaining. Because if there's one thing that we know, as much as we like to say that we all value education, we value entertainment. Right. Like you turn off, and y'all got kids, you let that Wi-Fi go down, you have some problems in your house, right? And we know that about ourselves. And so instead of beating each other up and making it seem like, oh, that's just who we are, embrace that and say, all right, well then how do we make this fun? How do we make this funny? How do we make it sexy? How do we make it entertaining? How do we make it delicious? All the things that we know that people really, really love. And that's really was the mission for us, again, not just as people who consider themselves activists, but also as marketers and in many ways entertainers. How do we make this stuff interesting so that more people are willing to have the conversation and then inspired to actually create the change that will improve their lives?
And you all did a great job with that. Your docu-series, I can't remember the name of it.
Food
but
on the
I
table.
Money
on the table.
He was very envious. He was like, oh my God.
Like,
we were watching it.
Doing.
And it really, really did grab your attention. It was around food and cooking as well as, financial topics that are important.
Because don't get it twisted. Julian is a
Chef.
classically trained chef,
Man,
unlike the
that
rest of
food,
us.
I'm like, can I have some?
Okay, he was doing his thing.
Yes, but you all did such an excellent job
Thank
with that.
you.
And this book, Cashing Out, Win the Wealth Game by Walking Away. Was that stat the premise of this book? Because I was shocked by that as well, too. Like the median wealth of Black families will be $0 by 2053. Like, what?
Yeah.
So was that the premise of writing this book?
It was definitely one of them,
Yeah.
right? Because we would go to these companies. We often get brought into corporations or into different organizations to speak. And we usually mention that stat somewhere in our talk just to make sure that everybody understands the stakes. Like, we're not just saying this because we want y'all to have nicer cars and nicer houses and for even something as grandiose as generational wealth. Like, the stakes are that in our lifetime, you could be in a position where you're having to support not only your own family, but like several of your loved ones because they can't manage, unexpected expenses. And so, yeah, that was definitely part of it because a lot of people are surprised by that. But then we start breaking it down by, well, are you surprised when we're only earning 67 cents to a white man's dollar? Are we surprised when you look at corporate org charts and you see, 1% of Black people in C-suite and VP positions? When you look at some of the biggest companies in the world, from Google to Netflix, Amazon, all these companies that we admire, Facebook, they still only have 3 to 4% of Black employees. And these are some of the highest paying companies in the globe. So we just don't have access to the same capital or financing that our white counterparts have. And so it's not as surprising that our net worth will be going in the opposite direction when you add on all of the financial services and, mortgages and predatory lending and all that stuff that comes with it. But yeah, it was definitely one of the motivations for at least targeting the audience of our book to Black professionals and Black families.
And I think it was also around just paying attention to what works. I
Yeah.
remember going to the barbershop, and I need to go back. But I remember going to the barbershop very early on after we found and really fell in love with learning more and sharing more about money and some of the lessons that we were learning. And I remember talking to my barber around some of the things that I was learning. I remember talking to him about investing and all this stuff. And it just kind of went in one ear and out the other. Like, he just did not care, right? But then, you know how it happens, like another barber who was in another chair started chiming in, and the conversation immediately went to crypto. And we started talking about crypto. And then I was having a conversation with my barber after that. And he said to me that, I was asking him, like, how did you learn about investing? Like, think back to some of your early memories. And I apologize if this is a little bit crude. You can bleep it out if you want to. But I asked him, I said, how did you learn about investing, or what are you investing? And he looked me dead in my eyes and he said, tampons. I invest in tampons, the companies that own tampons. Because if there's one thing I know, a woman is not going to go without tampons, and people are always going to be buying tampons. And I thought that it was such an odd, in slightly problematic way of thinking about investing. But if we're being honest, when I thought back, I remember hearing very similar lessons from well-intended men, right? This idea of lift your head, look around, look at the tires. There's a name on those tires. Look, these are the types of stories that stick in our minds. And this man was like 50 years old, and it is impacting the way that he invests today. And so I had a choice. I can either bombard him with a bunch of information, documentaries, and books that I know he's not going to read, or I can do my part to come up with a different set of stories that I knew would be just as impactful to help replace the ones that he has and subscribes to and is telling other people. And that's one of the biggest insights that we have. And even when we were writing the book, we realized this is not about bombarding people with math or research. It's about giving them stories that are relevant for today, that are relevant for the way that the world and economics works today, through a cultural lens that makes it stick.
Yeah.
That's what was most important for us. And that's what we tried to tap into for the book.